Hello and welcome to In the Art Scene podcast, a place where creatives share their stories. My name is Galina Marquez, and I have another cool story prepared for you today, so let's get to it. Hi everyone, and welcome to the next episode of In the Art Scene, and I am having another special guest today. I have been following Betsy Silverman for, oh my gosh, probably since the beginning of pandemic or pre-pandemic. And the first time I saw her streetscapes, I was blown away when I realized that they were actually paper collages, because they're so highly detailed, they're so well thought through, and I have no idea. It probably takes you 40 hours to complete every single one of them.
More.
Well, okay. More. Well, let's not jump before too far ahead. Let's start with the introduction. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, Betsy Silverman, and I'm a collage artist. I work entirely with recycled magazines. So I like the aspect of having somewhat green art. I get my donations. People drop them off at my door. Sometimes I don't know who they're from, or at openings. I might be at an open studio, for example, or a book group or something. And I really, really love what I do. I'm so thrilled to be an artist and to be able to enjoy what I do.
Have you always worked with paper, or have you?
Yeah, so I started out at the Rhode Island School of Design, which many people know as RISD. In 2001, I was working on a master's degree in architecture. And it really was a time where architects were beginning to be concerned with environmental issues, sustainable design, thinking about construction, having emphasis on regional contextualism. And this fascinated me. And as I was working towards my thesis and thinking, what should I do? And, what am I really drawn to? And as I continued to investigate, I found architects such as Shigeru Ban, who's a Japanese architect. He won the Pritzker Prize in 2014, which is the highest. It's like the Oscars of architecture. And he was working with trying to find ways to help people who had been displaced, either man-made or natural disasters. It might be earthquakes or other things that happened. And he began with taking tubes from factories that he recycled. He treated them and he started to build houses with them. And he went on to build churches just made out of paper tubes that stood for 10 years. And I just thought it was so amazing that we could take this humble material and something that was renewable and use it. So I started investigating the material and just kind of exploring everything about it, the structure of it. I love the beauty of how it let light through and, produce shadows, and how it could absorb noise. And so my whole thesis project was paper and building columns and walls and experiences that people could go through, and just an exploration of the whole thing. And I graduated from architecture school. My husband was working constantly as an attorney, coming home at 11 o'clock at night. And I had 3 kids in elementary school, and thought, I had started in architecture working at firms, but it was just overwhelming to try to keep up with, the whole family scene. So I started exploring a lot of different things. I was really still drawn, to paper. So I went to creating little gift cards. The Container Store was interested in it, little kits that I could make. I did different things like business cards, flyers, put together things for magazines. But I felt like I still hadn't found what I really loved. And I had gone to this presentation of James Dyson, of the Dyson vacuum cleaner company. Mm-hmm. And it was I think he went through over 5,100 prototypes of his model before he finally produced it. And he was just penniless. And they had their third kid and people thought they were crazy. And it kind of gave you inspiration to keep going and searching and, try to find what you're interested in. And I thought, it'd be great to do a collage of my children. So that was probably maybe my first or second collage just made out of paper. And it was a lot of fun. It took me that collage and the second one, which was very, very small, took me just months to do. It was crazy. I just didn't know what I was doing. There was nobody who had taught me how to do this. And there weren't very many people doing things with paper and collage. So that's how it all started.
I honestly, first of all, I bow before you for the patience that you have. Because I have seen some videos on your Instagram page of how you're doing, you're cutting very precise details.
Yeah.
You have an incredible sense of color. So it probably takes you quite a while to search through the magazines and find exactly the right shade that you need to cut in that. I don't even understand. It doesn't fit in my head. Do you have the idea and all the patterns
no, so
or you just do it on the fly?
Yeah. The color theory is really important for what I do. So I had gone back to RISD for a summer and I took all color theory courses to help me. And then I was in your area in San Diego, flying back for 2 years, twice a year, to this color consulting. You got a certificate for the International Association of Color Consultants. And it was, both experiences were really great. They'd say all right, here you have this, patch of color and try to make it look like this color instead by doing other things with it, And so that was really important because with paint, you can just mix and get exactly what you want. With paper, it's difficult because you want to find things within the family. Like, let's say you take a Sherwin-Williams or something like that. And you look at the color strips and it gets down to it's just gradations of color. And it's hard to find, particularly when you're doing collages of people, all those different things. You want cool things and I mean cool by cool colors that will give shadows, but it still has to be in the correct family. So that education was really important. So what I do is I will pull out some stuff to start, and then I'll draw out little diagrams of each part of the work I'm working on trace paper. A lot of architectural tools I use. Metal rulers. I use a standing magnifying glass, tweezers, scissors, X-Acto knives, cutting boards with whatever. And I diagram my canvas. So it's squared out, by inch. And I'll also create a corresponding drawing on trace paper that I can lay over the canvas. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And then what I'll do is use that little mini drawing and put more trace paper on, and everything I do, it's like a little template that I create. I'll do a little piece of that, draw it on trace paper, and then use it as a template to cut around. But the way the paper is organized by magazines, so I have thousands and thousands of magazines, and
you must have a lot of storage space.
And it's just organized by it might be here's Martha Stewart, here's Food and Wine, here's Art in America or whatever. And you sort of over time, and I've been doing it for a long time, you get to know who's photographing things for magazines. And I don't mean their name or anything, but you understand the style. Mm-hmm. So if I'm looking for burgundies or something, I might go to Food and Wine or Bon Appetit or something like that. And that's how I organize and start to pull. So I'll pull some things initially, but it's really based on as I'm going along and drawing and creating, then I say, all right, I need to take a break and go through it all. And that's probably one of the most time consuming things, is trying to find things right. I used to just cut parts of a magazine because I wanted to leave the page just in case there was something, but it made it really hard to flip. So it's basically flipping through, pulling out whole pages and cutting things. And then the floor just becomes this fluffy disaster, a foot high by the end of the project. It just scraps.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I thought that you would probably just rip them apart and store them by color.
Yeah, and a lot of people ask me that. Is that how you do it? But the thing about it is it's hard if you've got pieces to
Uh-huh.
go through individual pieces. It's like each little piece is a different size. And so for me, I can just like take a magazine and just flip, 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 and you just kind of catch what, your eye catches what it needs. It's
Well,
it's
yeah.
more it's more efficient this way for me.
Yeah, and it's probably easier to store as well.
Yeah. It is. Instead of like 100 boxes of different
Oh
shades.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that makes sense. Your education in architecture makes sense because when I look at your cityscape specifically, because that's what's something that hooked me onto your art, your cityscapes.
Yeah.
They're so precise. The perspective and how you construct the houses and everything, the buildings. It really does. And what's interesting, the most amazing thing to me personally is that even the ones behind you right now,
Yeah.
I look at them sort of from a distance, and they look like watercolors.
Yeah. Or people sometimes think of the photographs, depending on what it is, or a painting,
Yeah,
definitely.
they're highly realistic. They have this feeling of a watercolor because they're somewhat soft colored, kind of soft edges. How do you achieve that result?
Um, well, it's interesting. My best friend from when I was 12, she's actually a professional photographer, one of the top wedding photographers in the country. And we went through Boston photographing together. It was a lot of fun. And she was saying, I want to see what you're interested in photographing. And it was totally different from what she was. And my photographs are crummy. They're not like anywhere. They don't tend to be beautiful, but I'm always looking for like a really interesting composition, something that makes you feel like you're getting into a perspective. There's a sense of depth. So I guess when I'm putting it together, I'm just I'm looking for different things that blend. So your eye will make a whole out of something, but if you can find a really cool piece of paper that's the right hue, maybe for a side of a building, but it's got all this text on it that's a lot of fun, or scribbly stuff. That's what I'm looking for to make it like pop out as something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, that's absolutely, uh, yeah, just mind blowing. I'm sorry, I'm mumbling.
But I love it. And usually like you can, you can see the one way over here. So what I
Uh-huh.
usually do is start from the way back and start building it. And everything is just a layer on top of a layer. So I might start with a building. I start to layer on windows, different things. So sometimes there might be like 6 layers of information on any little part that you see.
How many hours on average? Because those pieces are at least 16 by 24, 16 by
Oh, they're
20.
bigger. They,
They're
they tend to
bigger.
be, yeah. So the city scenes tend to be typical city scene size will be like a 30 by 40-inch canvas, or a 3
Wow.
feet by 4 feet canvas, something like that. I've done several that are 8 feet
Wow.
for companies, or I did one for a restaurant that's in our Seaport district. But if I'm doing something like, say, a 3 feet by 4 feet, it's probably like 250 hours to complete.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's full time. This is what I do as a job. I pretty much it's 6.5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Again, I bow before you for your patience. That's a hard labor. I mean,
Every time I start a new one, I'm so excited, but I also can't wait to be done with the last one. The most exciting thing is just signing it. It's like, yay, it's done, but then I get really excited about the next one. So
do you work on one at a time, or do
I
you
can
have?
only work on one at a time. It's so different than how people paint, where they have to work on multiples because things are drying. That's all I can concentrate on. The studio is such a mess, and I pulled out as I'm working, I might have like 100 or 200 pages of things I pulled out that I find really interesting. I have to sift through those. All right, I'm on this part, in this part of the section, and I can't imagine trying to do more than one. And I don't need to, because there's no drying. It's just keep going, and then I'm able to stay concentrated on it.
Amazing. Just really amazing. Okay, a question that personally um, sits in my head, like, how do you not get bored?
I just find it so intellectually stimulating to try to find text or imagery that relates to whatever I'm doing. I was doing this Boston scene, and I found some stuff about John F. Kennedy, and there was like, there happened to be a plaque in that part that was about him. So I was able to add these little bits of information about him. Or it might be, I'm somewhere and I'm talking about the old mayor that we had for 20 years and the new, and you incorporate his name somehow into a building, or just talk about the scene, this is Boston. Or one work I did was called Boston Moves. And what was really fun about that was it was this scene of all these cars, on a main street in Boston, and nobody was moving. That's why it was called Boston Moves. And it was sort of making fun of the fact that Boston has at times the worst traffic in the whole country. Sometimes it's labeled. And I found these things like 187 miles per hour, and like we're all stuck in traffic, or like a speedometer was put in the back windshield of a car, just time is on everyone's mind. And there were moving vans and people were moving things in and out, but like everything was stuck. So it's like this, you're trying to create this whole scene of like this layers of information. And I find that really fun to be able to do. That's kind of like one of the best things about, collage is all the text and imagery you can incorporate. And sometimes people's eye doesn't even make it, they don't make sense of it. Like my son, he said, could you do this, a collage of me? This was several years ago. And I had, he and two other, he was on a rowing team. So two other teammates, and the back of one of the kids' heads, he had a cap on and his hair was popping out through the back. So I was trying to put things in that were interesting to my son. And I would say, like, there's David Ortiz, our, Big Papi, our hitter for the Red Sox. Nobody could make it out unless you turned it 90 degrees. So it's like these fun little puzzles, I think, that, his whole face made the hair of this kid come, that was coming out of the cap. And that's like, you can play with things. And I think I did one exhibit where I said in every single collage, you've got to find the dog just for fun. So people would come just to go try to find all the dogs, check it off their list.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And some of the recent works on Instagram, you started making more of the nature and some people. And I started noticing, like, on people's pieces of clothing, they're little tiny, like, like something
extra
that
something.
Yeah, extra something, some words, something that suggests little, like, traits of personality or
exactly. Yeah. So when people I guess they love to commission, particularly their kids, because then they say, all right, and they'll send me like pages of information. My kid likes to do this and this and this, and I try to put it in, and it's so fun. So one of the ones you probably recently saw was the 3 kids from India.
Yes.
And the dad was really great. And the kids were brilliant and musical and just wonderful. And each one had their own personality. The one son loved, math, and he loved to play Fortnite. He loved sports cars, and he loved his sneakers and basketball and Michael Jordan and everything. Mm-hmm. So all that got built in. You just find ways to incorporate it all. And the girl, I did a little video of her just making her face, but she was like a dancing queen and loved singing and art. But the dad said, but overall, they're all musical. They perform. So then we did this overall theme of music, where we had some of the songs they had. So I found the words like Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen and one of the Beatles songs, and that was Up in the Clouds, and the Beatles climbing up a tree, and other words from songs they've come up with, musical notes going up things. So I think that's like one of the things that can make it really fun and personal for people, especially when I'm doing the people, they like that aspect of like, there's something else that comes out other than just the image.
It's amazing. It's really like hidden messages.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It makes sense when you make a commission and you get a lot of information from people who are hiring you for that. But when you're making something of your own, or um, I'm sorry, are you exclusively working on commissions, or
I'm
you're just
not,
doing?
because I work with galleries and I have
Uh-huh.
a show coming up in July. It's a
Okay.
two-person show. Yeah. So I have to come up with a lot of work for that, to be able to
So
show.
so when you do work for yourself and you are coming up with those hidden messages, like do you give people hints or something? I mean, I know you just said about the dogs, but or do you like people just discovering them by
I
themselves
would
or
love to meet everyone who buys an artwork that I
uh-huh.
don't, might be through a gallery, because I feel like you're missing out. Like there's going to be stuff that you're not going to find unless I tell you. You're just not going to see it unless you rotate it, or, it's things get so hidden. And then if I'm at a show and I'm there, it's an opening or something, I can talk about the work and point things. And kids are really great at finding things, much better than adults, because adults' brains want to put things together so they don't see disparate parts. And that's really fascinating, you know.
That's very interesting. I feel like every single piece of yours deserves to have like a whole story written about it, and like list of little hidden messages, and attached on the back to everyone who buys the artworks. Like,
I
okay,
had somebody who bought a work and they just bought it that was, they hadn't commissioned anything in particular. They just liked this work and then said, could you just list everything on a piece of paper when you send it that's in there and where it is? So that was kind of cute.
that's amazing. That's yeah. Okay, well, yeah. Now I see how you don't get bored. Working on one piece for 200 something hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing. What was I don't know, the most fun or the most unusual you have personally worked on?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I get caught up in things that are a little crazy. I get a little crazy. One of the works I was working on in Boston, there were so many layers of who was making decisions. So an art consultancy company, I'd worked with them in Seattle. They had opened an office in Boston, so they already knew about my art. So I was on the short list, and they had contacted me and said, all right, you said you 6 weeks, and then you could, that's how long it would take you. And they had contacted me initially 6 months before, and they said, guess what? You're chosen. So we'll see this work in 6 weeks. And I said, no. It was 6 weeks to make it. And I have other things, And they said, we can't let the client down now. Do you know how we've been 6 months of deciding, whatever. So this was an 8-foot work. And I went to Boston. It was East Boston. This high-rise luxury condominium was being built, and this was the main piece. And I had to keep going back to find when the lighting was just right. And you could see from East Boston, the whole skyline of Boston. It was the most beautiful view, but I was there at like 5 a.m. shooting, putting this all together in Photoshop to create this panorama. And it kept going back. I would go to the art consultant, and then, the next layer, back and forth, where it was, they'd say like, oh, we like, this boat, could it move back a little further? Or and I started putting things on layers in Photoshop and like, how about this? How about this? So at the end, I was left with like 3 weeks. That was it, to create this intense, like all these buildings with all these tiny lights and windows. And I was working like 18 hours a day, just crazy. And I just
Gosh.
started throwing in things for fun. I had people parachuting into the city that had not approved, and I didn't care. It was like, all right, I'm going a little nuts, and things are going to get a little nutty in this collage.
Don't mess with the artist.
But they seemed happy. They never mentioned the people parachuting. I don't know if they noticed, but they were in the background.
That's fun. That's amazing.
I had people who people like to be in the scenes. I've done we have the public garden in Boston. There are these swan boats. People go for these little rides. Somebody pedals. They're like a bunch of people on the swan boat. And this family said, we'd like to be on the swan boat. We'd like to commission this work, and the whole family's on the swan boat. So they showed up to this event I was at, and they said, couldn't you come out and take pictures of us all, for the swan boat? And I said, I can't leave. It's an open studio. I'm, manning my station here. And so they set up all these chairs. They lined themselves up in a row, and they sent me the images of them just sitting in this, out on the lawn, all lined up in these little chairs. And then they ended up being, put into the scene of there they were on the swan boat, coasting. So I get like all kinds of interesting requests.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so interesting. Uh, uh, do you primarily focus? I mean, Boston is a beautiful city.
It is.
It's so like, yeah, you can explore it probably endlessly. Do you primarily focus on Boston scenes and surroundings, or do
I
you?
guess city scenes are my favorite, and my next show will be cities and towns. So I love that, as I mentioned, especially from an architectural perspective, to be able to
Mhm.
do city scenes. Excuse me. What I love about Boston, my daughter, for example, lives in Chicago. It's so huge, the buildings, everything, it's not scalable to me, where I can go through Boston's North End and we have all these beautiful historical buildings that are, you can get this whole scene that's amazing, which you wouldn't get if you had this giant highway and, big buildings going down and you're trying to get it. It wouldn't be interesting to people. So I do really, really love capturing Boston. I'll do parts of New England, go up to Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, capture cows and little scenic things, covered bridges, which I think are beautiful. I am going to be going into New York this spring as part of the city town thing, capturing New York, which I love, like the idea of Times Square and all the lights and all the things that I can do with the motion that's happening on, especially if I can capture some taxis, which are rare these
Oh
days.
yeah, oh yeah. Do you do any night scenes?
I did do a night scene pretty recently. Somebody from Washington, D.C., who travels to Boston quite a bit, was going regularly to this pizzeria, which is Regina's Pizzeria, which is very famous in Boston. And at nighttime, the red brick of the building, they have these lights and the whole thing just glows with this incredible red. And she said, "Can you do something like this?" So I hadn't been to Regina's Pizzeria, so I went there and had to have pizza and ate with my family and took photos at night, and it was really fun. And she, I loved it because I love that kind of like the feeling of like things being kind of gritty but kind of happening, and there's motion and neon lights and all kinds of stuff. I did a work for Tufts Medical. They're in an area of Boston. It's a Chinatown area. If you look at it, it might be like kind of look a little crummy at times, but they said, "We'd like something in our area to show for our new conference center. Can you do a couple of works?" And I did these works, and it was just like this glammed up kind of feeling of like people are moving through, they're dressed up, it's the lights and all the oranges and the purples and everything that's happening, signs with the double neon happening. That was really fun to do.
Cool. Um, when you first started, your kids, as I understand correctly, they were quite small, quite
Yeah.
little, right?
Yeah.
So, share a secret with me. as as a new mom,
Well,
I'm really curious how.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, when I started with them, I mean, they were actually in elementary school. So I did have that time, you know,
Okay.
as they got older, they just, they, they would see my work, me in the studio all day. They would come in and say, "Hey mom, what's going on?" And which really meant, "What are we having for dinner?" No interest really in my work at all. And I said, "Hey, do you want to see what I've been working on?" And what my youngest son said one time, he said, "It's like, Mom, it's like having steak. It's great, but you have it. So, all the time. So, you're not going to be wowed by it each time that you." So I don't
So
know what to say other than, I was fortunate to have those hours to get started, where they were in school.
have they ever participated, helped you being interested in
Yeah,
creating some sort of art themselves?
well, they are not artists themselves, although my youngest, I thought it was phenomenal. When he was in first grade, he was able to draw not just like a two-dimensional, like a car. He had it going around a bend and you could see the underside of the wheels, and I
Uh-huh.
thought, oh, he really has an interesting ability, spatial relations ability.
Hmm.
And he has always been the one who, like, if we go down a street and I say, "Oh, look at this house, they've changed the colors." He says, "Yes, that's perfectly appropriate for Victorian. I like how they did the contrast of the purple and the green." So he has sort of an eye. My other son, he doesn't notice like across the street if another story is being built on right out his window in a house or whatever. But so the youngest one has helped me I'll say to him at the end of the process, I'll say, I always do what I say, inspect the canvas, which means you're looking for any little pieces of paper that have kind of dried and, are separating, and he'll go over the whole canvas and you have to rotate it and put it in different lights, and he'll apply varnishes, and he'll actually help. My works are completely wrapped all the way around with the image. So I extend the image. So simple things he'll do, like if the top is all sky, he'll add all the blue and stuff. And that really helps.
Awesome. How old is he now?
He graduated last year from college. So he's now 23 or so.
Wow.
I guess coming up. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I assume he did not graduate with BFA, MFA. He's doing something else.
Yes, all of them are.
That's so interesting. How does it feel to be the only artist in the family?
The only artist? My mom was an artist.
Okay.
So I guess it's always been something I've been interested, very early on drawing. When I was in high school, I was head of the art club, just kept going. I just loved it. And I thought, I love math, science. I love to draw. Architecture is perfect for me. And I got into the program, and being at that school, Rhode Island School of Design, I learned from, you'd have winter sessions where you'd explore other things. And I got to explore a lot of different departments, sculpture and all kinds of things. And it was just, you gain so much. I mean, over the years, I love to take classes, no matter what it is, art classes, because it just is constantly inspiring you and giving you new information about how you can use materials, or, seeing somebody else's perspective. And so, can't even remember what we were just started as the question, but
being an artist in the family.
Yeah. So I think I just feel like I'm not alone.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
Let's take a short coffee break. Producing this podcast sure takes a lot of energy. Would you buy me a coffee so I can continue doing it? I would really appreciate it. The link is in the show notes and on our website, intheartscene.com. Thanks for supporting our show. You mentioned the show in July.
Yes.
So
actually August.
Okay.
I keep thinking July because I have to get works up for install.
Okay. So conveniently, this episode is going to air at the very beginning of August.
Oh, perfect.
So we have a perfect opportunity to plug your show. So if you want to talk about that a little bit, that will be, appropriate timing.
I'm showing with Edgewater Gallery in Middlebury. They are an absolutely amazing gallery. They had a place in Boston at the Design Center for a while, and they've had different galleries in different locations. They have two galleries in Middlebury, Vermont, and they're both just unbelievable. They have incredible artists. They have the artist who does all the design work for Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Nice.
Yeah. So he's from Vermont, So I'm really excited to return to Vermont. And the show will run, I'm showing with another gal, Rachel Wilcox. So it's a 2-person show, and it will run August and September, 2 months.
Nice. I'll make sure to put the link and the address, everything in the show notes. So everyone who's listening, it's right in time. Go to the gallery right now.
It'll be fun. The works are fun. It's a different experience than seeing it on a screen or something. Because when you see and see how big they are, sometimes I look at other people's work and I said, oh my gosh, look at this. And then I get there and it's like this tiny work. And I'm like, oh, because you never have the sense of scale when you're looking at something on a computer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why, I was a little bit at the beginning, I was a little bit confused because, when you look at the tiny image on Instagram, it really looks like a watercolor. And then when you start blowing things up and you see all those little messages and everything, it's like, oh my goodness, how does this work? And I can only imagine seeing this in a full scale 3x4 feet with all the little details. It must be absolutely incredible.
A lot of people assume that it is paint or something else. And even when they see it up close, they'll say like, oh, and do you put paint on here? Because I don't know. Somehow people don't imagine that you could just make it out of magazine. They think you have to somehow, there must be something else. And I find like to me, it's like, whoa, my studio is already a big enough mess. I don't need to add paint, and like, that's not my specialty, and forget it, but I have a little fun with doing every once in a while, a collage that's all this dumping of paint tubes, and the paint tubes are all made from paper. That's sort of the irony, because I'm always being called out as like, you must have paint in here. It's like, there's no paint. And here's a whole collage of paint tubes with no paint, but what's fun about doing that collage is I'll put in all kinds of references to artists from the past. I might have Warhol or Lichtenstein or regional artists and little globs of their works, and it all becomes part of the imagery.
Awesome. Do you teach anywhere? Do you have your own courses?
No, I've been asked that, and I just don't have the time. I'm just pretty much commission works. Even over the pandemic, there was a 6-month queue. So it's just constant. No.
Wow. Wow. Have you ever experimented with different mediums? I mean, I know paper is your medium of choice, and now, you're a busy artist. Your studio is completely set up. But do you have an urge sometimes to experiment with something else, maybe, or maybe in the past you have done something different with different mediums?
So when I was at RISD, I did get to explore a lot of things. And even through a community class I took here, which was an illustration class. I love that. We were illustrating children's books. It was so much fun to do. And I applied watercolor to the ink images that I did, and nothing came of it, but it was really fun to do. I took sculpture classes, painting classes. I did a class for furniture building, which was really fun to do.
Wow.
You build prototypes, and a lot of times you're building them out of cardboard or something to start, and then you move on to the final thing. So I just find it. And then, anytime you take any classes, it just opens it. When you go to a museum or you go to a show, you can appreciate it so much more because you dabbled in whatever the artist does, and they have the expertise and you don't, but you understand the difficulties and the challenges.
Yeah. Well, so have you ever tried to combine it with your medium? Like, for example, making a sculpture and then paper mache all the collage pieces on top of it or something. I'm just whipping it up.
Yeah. No. Yes, I just keep it really pure, just magazines. And I like the fact that now I'm just dealing with discarded things that I can recycle. So I guess not. I'm still so satisfied with, I feel like I have so much more I want to do still with this medium that I haven't kind of branched out into something different.
Well, that's again, I bow before you. No. I get so bored with. Yeah, I need to constantly switch to something new. It's I don't know how that works. I make it like
a little joke that someday, I've got my fashion magazines out, and there's perfume ads, and like maybe I'll do like a collage that's like a scratch and sniff or something.
Well, that would be actually interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah, it would be. Talk about like the most favorite thing you have ever done personally. Something maybe for yourself or for someone else. Something that means a lot to you personally as an artist.
I did this recent work, which you can see way over here on Instagram, and it's
a beautiful landscape.
Thank you. I had done a little video of it on Instagram for people to see, where they can just see a little detail of how things get built. And one thing I liked about it was that I was selected for this work, just not even, I didn't have to go up against anybody. They just said, we want you to do this. And they said to me, so what are you going to do? And usually, they have an idea of what they want, and I'll go and photograph or whatever. So I went to this town, which is Sudbury, and it's a cute New England town. They've got little, the cupolas, et cetera, but things are sort of spread out. And I thought it's really not going to work to do a town scene. There's just not enough in the composition. So I went to the reservoir, which is well known. And I you have to wait for a day where it's sunny and they're few winds so you can get the reflections and such. And I went around and I couldn't believe it. I got home. I had these beautiful pictures, which never happened because of, like I said, I'm not a great photographer. And I pieced them together in Photoshop, and they were so big. They were like over a gigabyte of information. And I said, all right, I'm only sending 2 proposals. They're very similar, just like off by a couple feet. Here they are. And they were very happy and they picked one. So I was so excited that, I came up with this idea that I was chosen, whatever. But I loved it because it was like, there was so much information. There was like all these reflections that I had to work on, which means I'm using a T-square to try to measure to make sure it's reflecting properly. There were really dark spots, light spots, points where we were getting to the end of fall. There were beautiful pops of color, parts where the lighting was coming through and reflecting back into the water. So I saw it as more like this beautiful kind of landscape piece, that painters are able to do, and that I usually am doing like city scenes or something. So it was something very different than my traditional. Even when I'm doing something that might be garden-like, it's usually in a city, like at the public garden with swan boats or something where you still get this urban feeling of buildings in the background, et cetera. So this was just all just nature. And I thought it was just really lovely to do, I guess, just to work on it every day.
It is very different from your usual work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen, this kind of a landscape on your page.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's make sure that we put the photo in the show notes. How do people contact you, and how, if anyone is interested in the commission, how can they do that?
So they can go to my website.
Okay.
I have a contact form. It's really simple. It's betsysilverman.com. Or they can contact me via Instagram.
Okay.
A number of commissions come through Instagram, and I always respond to people.
Okay. And it's like 6 months
Betsy
waiting
Silverman
list.
Collage is my Instagram handle.
Yeah. I'll put all the links in the show notes again. But it's quite a waiting list right now.
Right now, well, especially I've got a commission I just started. I have to squeeze in one more, and then I have to start work for the city town stuff, because it's going to be absolutely nutso, no summer for me. All the work all my work from studio is all sold. So it's all going to be brand new work. So and then I've got commissions starting again July. So availability in September.
Okay. Okay, so we'll see what the situation is going to be like in August, September, because this episode is coming out in August. So
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question. You said that through pandemic, you were booked like 6 months ahead for everything. How did pandemic actually change your work? Because, the lockdown.
Right. So, everything was, all the gallery shows, everything was online. It was really tough for artists. And previously, I would say like half of my work was commissioned, but I was fortunate to stay busy. We weren't, one thing I love as an artist is to be part of art associations and different groups and be able to talk to other artists and go to the openings and such. And so all of us had that, suffered through not being able to have that enjoyment of receptions and such. So I just stayed busy, and a lot of the work, it just goes everywhere. I send pieces to London, to Canada, I'm working on a piece for Costa Rica, Boston pieces, the 3 children that I recently did that went to New York City. So it's, some parts changed, but some didn't, because it's a lot of times I'm just dealing remote with people via the computer.
Well, in terms of your process, there's still balance, right? You go outside, you take pictures, you explore the areas and stuff like that, and then you spend hours in your studio creating something from the reference that you took. Being a few months in lockdown, I assume that probably that balance was shaken a little bit. How, or did you have enough references to just,
I
power
did have a
through?
lot of references. So
Okay.
some days I'll take I'll go, it's a beautiful day. I'll take photos. I'll say, oh, it's the beginning of spring, or this is perfect peak fall weather in New England. And I'll take hundreds and hundreds of photos. And the commission work, a lot of times they're sending me their own image. And
Okay.
yeah, so they're sending for example, I did this scenery of these live oak trees from this family. Their daughter was going to Tulane. She'd just gotten in. This was a gift for the husband. So they sent me the image. And then I guess I'll show you personally, like what the before and after.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like bringing it all to life. That sometimes you get really crummy photographs, but it's not even about that. It's like, can I see potential in this? Mm-hmm. That's something that could be amazing. So I do get a lot of information, from other people. That's either their kids or their house or this, can you do this scenery? Like the Costa Rica, it was like, this is the property of this person and they wanted something, and the beautiful birds and part of their pool and such. So that will go on. The next one coming up is somebody sent me, they were actually in Boston. They wanted a family portrait of a collage of them all at a tailgate of the Patriots game. So things like that. Most of the commission stuff is not me coming up with it. It's them sending, hey, could you do something with this?
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. All right. So we're almost at the top of the hour. Is there anything that you want to say? Something that you wanted to bring to this conversation, or I don't know, an advice to a new collage artist who's just trying themselves in this medium? Best advice?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that early on I was buying what I thought were premium canvases. All my work goes on canvases. And with collage, there's a certain amount of pressure that you're putting every time you glue something. So my spouse and I, we eventually went to building our own canvases, and we use, it's just top of the line. We use Museo products, which are backed by aluminum. It's wood and aluminum, so the canvases never warp. We use Belgian linen, stretch our own canvases with this patented device that makes it really taut. And so all these things I think are really important. The glue I use is a professional glue. It's clear. It will never yellow. People who use Mod Podge are making a mistake. It will yellow over time. You want to use the best products that you can and make sure that you varnish the work. Acid-free glue. I apply 2 layers of a UV golden varnish, separated 12 hours, and then 3 layers of UV Lascaux spray, so that the work is really protected, because paper degrades, and it's the biggest problem is light. So if you can really protect your image, if you want to create something professional that you can sell, all of these things are extremely important, I feel.
So UV protection is really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even magazines I can go through that people send me. I could get a Vogue magazine from 1970, and if I open it, it hasn't been opened in 50 years. It's still pristine inside. It's a matter of the light deteriorating.
I actually remembered one of the questions that I wanted to ask you.
Oh, good.
Yes, you mentioned that you were trying to make your work as green as possible. You're recycling old magazines. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, because this is one of the things that I personally advocate for, and I've been recently talking to artists who are also incorporating this kind of values in their work, taking some recycled materials or recycled substrate to use instead of canvases or something like that. So how did that come about? I mean, I get it, the magazines, it's easy to just ask people and they will bring you probably a bunch of was it a conscious decision, or did it just happen and now you kind of stick with it? Do you like working with the vintage magazines? Because you just mentioned one from 1971.
I almost, like not vintage in the sense this is some home magazine from 1920, say. I am very particular about paper that I do receive for magazines. So I can't receive, if I receive things like Time magazine or People, the quality of the paper isn't there. So if I create a work with that, it's going to be, once the glue goes on, it's going to be muddy. You
Mhm.
won't get like really bright whites or the beautiful blues or anything. So that is a consideration. I think I remember doing a project with my daughter. She had this in school when she was in elementary school. They said, all right, create some sort of piece of art of your favorite animal. And she loved German Shepherds. So I said, we have this construction paper, all these different colors. What if we just like tear pieces and we just start to build it up and create the different color zones of the animal? So I guess those were like the little transitions that kind of moved me to finally get into magazines, because magazines just seemed more sophisticated in that there was already imagery, history, little stories to be told on top of whatever you were seeing. So it was all this sort of like memory of things that you could incorporate, the layers of information in the text. And that's, I think, just, you take these baby steps and you start realizing, oh, if I did this would even be more interesting.
Okay. Have you ever had a magazine that you would look through and it's like, there's no way I will tear it apart?
Sometimes a cooking magazine has these great images and recipes, and I'll like, either take a photo or something, and then I'll wait a while and like, all right, it's had its time, it's. But for the most part, no. I mean, I'll tear apart Art in America or whatever, and sometimes you get duplicates anyway, so you're thrilled. You've got like backups.
Cool. I'm kind of a sucker for the vintage stuff. And I was shopping like a few months ago. I was shopping at one of the thrift stores in the area, and I found this. It's a Life magazine from 1946.
Oh yeah, that would be hard.
Yes, I spent
because it has value too. I mean,
It does. So there was an article, something about it was the very end of the World War II, and me having a background in marketing and advertising, seeing all those ads that are very misogynistic, like
right, the woman ironing or shirts crisp enough,
yeah, or like a new refrigerator, like how your wife is gonna love this new refrigerator, or doctors smoking cigarettes, promoting cigarettes, or something like that. So to me, it was just like, I have no idea what to do with this magazine. I don't even collect the magazines. I paid $15 for that magazine.
Yeah,
I put it in
because it was so fascinating.
Yeah, it was fascinating. So I was curious if something like that happened to you, that you get something and it's too valuable to rip apart.
I have had some magazines that had like old images of JFK, Jackie, and I still probably would cut through them. If there was like something really great that happened, like in a scene in Boston where he was, and I could, kind of include it. It's sort of like the person's buying the art from you. So why not include something really, like I have a work that I found this image of a very old ticket, Red Sox ticket from 1920, and it was a picture of it. And I thought, this is so beautiful. It blends perfectly with this building. And then it's like a little fine for the person who buys it. It still gets saved in its own way, right?
Yeah. So in a way, you're giving it a second life.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a great perspective.
It lives on.
Yes. And you protect it probably better than, someone would collecting it in a shelf somewhere.
Where it just sits on the dusty shelf. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should send you that 1946. All righty. Well, thank you so much for your time, because I know how busy you are, and I was just thrilled when you respond to my email.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reaching out.
It was absolutely awesome. I don't know if I tried. Have I tried to contact you on Instagram?
You did, and when I saw your name, I was like, oh my gosh, you contacted me before, so I thought, I got to get, sometimes I get so overwhelmed and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm going to get back to this. And
I'm persistent. Don't worry. I would have gotten you on the podcast anyway. All right. Well, thank you so much for carving an hour of your time out of your busy schedule.
It was
on
so
Saturday.
Wonderful to talk to you. I really enjoyed it.
It's a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really did enjoy talking to you. It was wonderful.
Well, we'll see. Maybe I will be able to travel to Boston by September-ish, because I would really love to see your exhibition.
Although it's going to be in Vermont, that one. The one
Can't
in
remember. Okay.
August, September. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I'll make sure to include all the information, all the references, and it would be really nice to see some sort of a before and after, like a reference photo
Sure.
compared
I'll send
to
that to
the
you.
finished work. Yeah,
Yep.
because that
I'll send you the 5-foot, what it looks like, when it, is photographed properly, and some before and afters that you can see what I'm, what I take that might be crummy photography, or what people send me that's not perfect either. So
yeah, that would be awesome. That would be really awesome. Well, thank you so much, Betsy, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
You too. I hope you're enjoying the holiday and doing things with family, even though you're feeling worn down and ready to be done.
We're going to power through a Passover Seder today.
Have fun.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. And I will see you again in the art scene. It has been another episode of In the Art Scene podcast. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a good review on Apple and go listen to other great stories. Check out our website intheartscene.com or follow us on Instagram at intheartscene for more content. If you are a creative and you want to share your story, shoot us a message from the website or DM us on Instagram. Look forward to seeing you next time in the art scene.